The latest rotation for Pokemon TCG was just announced for April 10th, 2026. That means so many important cards and even some whole decks are going to become instantly illegal. I'm going to be showing you what's leaving, what decks are still going to be good, and also how to keep up to date on the meta. I'm PJ, and this is How Not to Suck TCG. Now today's video is sponsored by One Shot Energy. Now One Shot brings you all kinds of great products like their energy chews, their focus chews, and their newer voice drops. Now if you're like me and you play Pokemon TCG, you don't want to spill your energy drink all over your cards and make a mess, so having the chews is going to be the best way to do something like that. Focus chews also help keep your head in the game and keep on going strong with a caffeine-free multiple energy supplement here to keep you focused on your game and you not sucking. Obviously, if you're going to be making content or even talking to your opponent in-game, you want to have the voice drops here and they will help you out, keeping your voice nice and clear for the remaining of your tournament. If you want to grab products like these, make sure you're using this discount code, and that helps me out when you're purchasing your next order for One Shot. That's all I've got for now. Let's get back into the video. First off, let's talk about rotation. Now, rotation happens around this time every single year, and what happens with the Pokemon TCG is we look back at previous sets and rotate them out or make them illegal for standard tournament play. And that way, all of the newer cards are able to flourish in the meta. That means that all of the old cards that are a little bit too old now will no longer be legal in your decks. So if you go and play a League Challenge, a League Cup, or a Regional, even an International, and for sure, World Championship, you will not be able to use cards that are not standard regulated. Now, this year for 2026, we're going to go ahead and move back the regulation mark for everything that was G and before and start with regulation mark H. So if you see at the bottom of your card the regulation mark and it isn't H or going into the future, we know that those cards are going to be illegal. Now, why does the Pokemon Company do this? And a lot of other TCGs as well. This is because it keeps the meta fresh. We don't want to keep using old broken cards or maybe even more broken combos with the newer cards that are being released. It keeps the meta fresh, and it obviously helps the playability of the overall game, and that's what the game designers wanted. Now, there are some alternative formats outside of Standard that allow you to play cards that have rotated, and there's even things to keep in mind like errata cards. Now, what errata means is that it was a card that gets a reprint that's in a current Standard format, and you can use some of the older versions or older printings of that card. Now, some of them don't always exactly line up for the text, but we know that we can use what we have to our abilities and play the cards that are going to be errated. Pokemon generally does release a list of errated cards where you can check in the link I'll post in the description down below. Now let's get into the cards that are rotating out in April. So here, I'm not going to go through every card that's rotating, but we can take a look through all of the cards and I'll pick out the most influential ones that we can talk about in the video. Now, if we scroll through here, I know that we had a brief instance where Spidops was pretty cool. We obviously are seeing some of the Toad School that go with Toad Scrool, and we know that there's a good Toad Scrool, but we won't get into that one right now. Unfortunately, the Meowscarada EX lovers or enjoyers are going to be a little sad. We had a couple of meme decks with Fortress EX. I am just trying to see what other decks that we actually had. I mean, Toad Scroll EX did have some tournament showings in some regionals. That is also rotating. Let's take a look. We have Venomoth, which was one of my personal favorites before Badoo. This was the item locking card that you could play. We have the Toad Scroll line here. So obviously Slimy Mold Colony has been so good as a counter to some decks, but we are losing the Toad Scroll here with that Slimy Mold Colony. And even Espathra, which was a pretty decent Charizard counter in some decks, is going to be rotating. Now moving on to the fire decks, not too much that we see here. And there weren't too many influential fire cards, but we will talk about Chi-Yu EX. It was played in a lot of control decks. So we are seeing that rotating. We do have the Charcadets here that are also rotating. I know that there are a multitude of Charcadets seeming to be printed, but these Charcadets are now rotating out. We have Charmeleon here that is going to matter because it does have the 100 HP. I know we have a new one that has 110 HP, but that was a playable card for some time. We're looking at a few other staples in here. Again, more Charcadets are going to be rotating, so we do have to be careful on what Charcadets we have available going forward. We have the Chi-Yu here that was played in a lot of Charizard EX decks that we will no longer have. And then this Charmeleon is also rotating with the Flare Veil ability to prevent damage counters from being placed or any effects onto this. And then we are losing Armarouge EX, which was played in a couple of Armarouge decks, but not really influential, I would say. Now, we do have the promo Charmander here that will be rotating out. I know some people love that card. Taking a look at the water, we have Wugtrio leaving us, unfortunately. Wugtrio is not going to be playable anymore. All of those coin flip enjoyers are going to be a little sad. So we're trying to find cards that were played or were fun. Obviously, an influential card here in Chen Pao was played for a long time. People tried to bring it back over and over again. We're losing Baxcalibur also as that water energy accelerator. We don't have that anymore, so now losing Baxcalibur, we're going to hope for another energy acceleration for water types. We won't see that. We do see the Froakie and the Frogadier line that goes with Greninja, which we'll get into. We have Palafin rotating out and the Finizen as well. So we have a lot of the Palafin deck gone to rotation. Serena EX was also played for a short time, but more influential is Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle was a throw-in tech for a lot of decks to help with gusting and getting those knockouts with your opponent protecting Pokemon on their bench. We are losing that now too, and we do have this Snorunt with Ice Shard also leaving the format. On to Lightning, we do have the Magnezone EX that we are losing. I know that that was a niche deck, but it was pretty cool for its time. More influential, and probably one of the most influential Lightning cards that we're losing is Miraidon EX. It was its own deck, obviously able to accelerate Lightning Pokemon from the deck onto the board. Pretty good. Had a lot of good scenarios. We have Luxray leaving the format. That was a great inclusion in some anti-Lugia V-Star decks and a couple of other niche decks. We are losing United Wings. Finally, United Wings is flying away. Scrolling through here, we do lose that Junk Magnet Magneton as well. So that was part of the Magnezone deck. Here's a big one that we are losing, and that's Iron Hands. Iron Hands EX with Amp You Very Much, making people cry at the game. Now going to be lost to rotation. And we've made it to Psychic Pokemon. Now, there's a huge hit here. We're obviously losing Drifloon in this part. We've got Klefki as another single prize Pokemon that's been pretty influential in a lot of lists. We're losing the Ralts and the Gardevoir. The entire Gardevoir deck is now gone to rotation. There's no way to accelerate energy with Gardevoir EX and Psychic Embrace. So that is going to be a huge hit for a lot of people who were playing Gardevoir for a long time. We do have Banette EX here, which was played a little bit, but, you know, not one of those influential cards. Looking through the rest of the Psychic type Pokemon here, we do have this Togepi that was played with the Togekiss, and that is a little bit better because it has the whiny voice attack for single colorless energy. That's going to be gone. Cleffa, another huge card for setup and establishing a board. Grasping Draw has been so good in so many decks. We are losing that to rotation as well. We are going to lose Alakazam EX, and this is more of a fun card than anything else, but we finally got a decent Alakazam into the format, and now we have an even better Alakazam. So some of these pieces like the Abra and the Kadabra that go with the newer Alakazam are going to be rotating out. Xatu for energy acceleration with Psychic Pokemon. Again, we're talking about that. Xatu is also leaving the format, so we don't have that energy acceleration. Again, Screamtail, another part of the Gardevoir deck. We do have Gimmighoul rotating out. Iron Valiant, which was pretty good in some Donk decks, is also rotating. And here's another huge blow to Psychic with the rotation is Mew EX, leaving with the restart ability, genome hacking as the attack and a free retreat. So having no access to Mew to help with your setup is also going to be a little bit more difficult in those decks that struggle with the initial setup unless we see some new cards to help. We're also losing Fluttermane as part of the Ancient Box decks and more recently some of the Gardevoir EX decks. So we're losing Fluttermane to block abilities in the active spot from your opponent's Pokemon. And then we're going to scale down into the fighting type. Now, a big one for me is going to be this Lucario. Having Mega Lucario EX in the format, but being able to utilize a single prize Lucario has been really good as a one-of inclusion, and we're losing a couple of Riolos in the process as well with this rotation. Hawlucha being an enormous staple in a lot of those decks, namely Dragapult EX to get damage counters on 70 HP Pokemon to take those one-shots with Phantom Dive. Now going to be lost. We are losing Great Tusk EX, which is one of my personal favorites in a deck, but we did lose that. And then we've got Koraidon here. We are losing the Makuhita that could potentially go in those Lucario decks I was talking about. Ting Lu that had a very short-lived day in the modern realm of standard Pokemon. We are losing that as well. Cloth was in a couple of, or Cloth EX was in a couple of control decks. We will be losing that. And just kind of looking down the line here, not too much else. Sandy Shocks we're losing, and the regular Cloth here with Unhinged Scissors is also rotating out. Minior for the Snorlax decks is going to be rotating, and Hoopa EX is also going to be rotating a lot of decks. We're trying to counter Mega Box with this card. Energy Crush is actually really good for 2 Dark Energy, but no more. We won't have that card available to us. We get to move down into Dark, and we did have a short-lived time with Weavile. Weavile using the Assaulting Hunt. Was played in some of those Palafin decks. We're not going to have access to that. The Hydreigon wasn't really played, but the big one here for me is going to be Charizard EX. Now, Charizard is going to be lost, and we see Infernal Rain still doing some work right now in the current standard format, but as of April 10th, we will no longer have access to the Charizard EX here. So not too much else we're losing in Dark. We are going to lose the Brute Bonnet as another ancient Pokemon that's going to be lost to rotation, but we are going to be missing Roaring Moon EX here. So Roaring Moon is one of those cards that we hated seeing on the other side of the playing field, but we loved playing. Such a fun deck. We're also going to be losing Pecharunt here. I know a lot of people despise that card because it was part of the Donk deck, but we don't have that anymore, so we don't have to worry about it, and our Dark Pokemon have finished up here for rotation. Now, Metal Pokemon didn't have too many spicy cards, but we did have Revavroom as a draw engine with Rumbling Engine for a while and the ability here. So we saw that played in a couple of decks. Scizor as a counter in Goldango decks are being lost, and that brings us right into Goldango itself. Goldango is no longer going to be a deck because we're losing that to rotation. A lot of players playing that. It's actually probably one of the most played decks currently in standard format, but Goldango EX is going to be gone to rotation. Nothing crazy here when we get down to Dragon type Pokemon. Dragonite being one of my favorite Pokemon, but I'm really excited for Mega Dragonite EX. But we are losing some of the predecessor Pokemon like the Dratini and the Dragonair as well for that line. I know that we did see Dragonite, just the regular Dragonite, in some Regidrago V-Star decks, but we're losing that going forward, and even Noivern kind of showed up here, but overall nothing too impressive that we're losing in the Dragon types. Moving all the way down to colorless Pokemon, we're losing Skwovet, which was played in a lot of decks pre-last rotation in April. We have the Dunsparce here with Find a Friend that's also rotating. I know the Dunsparce is popping up in a lot of decks, but we are losing that Dunsparce. We're losing Squawk Ability, which is another card that we see in so many decks as a splashable tech. Pidgeot EX is a fantastic card and always has been a fantastic card. It was used since it was released all the way until the end of rotation, and I know I'm going into the future a little bit, but I'm sure that we'll see a lot of other Pidgeot EX decks going forward all the way up until we have to rotate it out. What an influential card has been, and I'm sure that will be remembered in the expanded format for sure. Obviously losing the Pidgeotto with the free retreat here too alongside that. Trying to go through here, Bombardier was one of those cards that we assumed would be a meta staple, but only appeared in maybe a Zoroark or Zoroark EX deck. That's got enough stuff to deal with the regular meta here, and obviously the Pidgey is going to be lost here. Now we do have Ditto that we're losing for a lot of the Terra decks, so no more Ditto available in here, but Ditto is going to be one of those cards that we're going to be missing in Terra box decks or any sort of setup decks. Now, for some reason, Noctowl comes up on here, but don't get worried. Noctowl is not leaving us. We will still have the Terra box engine for Pokemon going forward. When we're looking at trainers, we're just going to go alphabetically here. Ancient Booster, Energy Capsule, Artisan, and Arven all at the top of the list here. Influential cards across the board. Obviously Ancient Box playing that, and then we see it in a lot of the Donk decks here for Brute Bonnet. Artisan, one of the biggest staple cards for so many decks, obviously helping get set up and getting your non-rule box Pokemon out onto the field. Arven was a staple in so many decks, too many to count, that we just have to keep crying in our sleep that Arven won't be around anymore. We can't get our tool cards, we can't get our item cards out on the first turn of the game to help get set up. So we are going to be missing Arven for sure. We've got Bravery Charm here. Now we are getting a boss's order, so don't be concerned that it's on this list. But Bravery Charm is more of a loss here. You do have the plus 50 on basic Pokemon. That was really good and helped so many decks remain established. But we do have bigger mega Pokemon now in the format. We just cannot put Bravery Charms on the basic ones anymore. Counter Catcher is going to be a huge loss on this list here. Counter Catcher was such a great gusting card. Obviously, we'll still have Boss's Orders in the format, but losing Counter Catcher did help with a lot of those decks that didn't want to necessarily use their supporter for turn to gust something up from the bench and maybe even trap it. So a lot of those control style decks or just the aggressive decks are not going to have access to that. Crushing Hammer, what I'm a little sad about, we usually see a reprint for Crushing Hammer, but now we're finally losing it to this rotation, so I have to put my Crushing Hammers in the bin for now and see what we get. Defiance Band was a great card in a lot of decks to help edge over the amount of damage output that you had. Defiance Vest was also really great in those control decks. Earthen Vessel is a huge card that we're losing here. Earthen Vessel just in so many decks to help accelerate energy from hand onto your Pokemon, or just to look for energy for setup in those multiple energy typing decks. We are going to be losing that. Electric Generator goes hand in hand with those Miraidon decks or any of the Lightning decks. I know we still have Electric into the format that we can utilize to accelerate lightning energy, but now not having Electric Generator is going to be tough. We are losing energy retrieval here as well, as far as we know, unless we get a reprint. Those ones generally do get a reprint, but as of now, we aren't seeing it. And energy switch, same thing there. We usually get a reprint of these, so currently we do not have confirmation that there is going to be an energy switch, so if we are losing that, that's going to be really tough. Now, Erica's Invitation is a G-Block supporter, so we are going to be losing that in so many decks. It was a phenomenal card to get something onto the field and just basically gust up to trap things. Future Booster Energy Capsule, again in those future decks, is going to be gone here. So if you are still planning on playing future decks, you are going to lose access to that free retreat. Now, Iono is a huge card that I want to point out here. Iono being lost to rotation means that we don't have a disruption supporter really in our decks. I know that we could potentially get a newer version of Judge into the format. I mean, we have this G-Block Judge, but no more Judge into the format does kind of hurt. Jacques was played in a couple of those stage 2 decks. We're losing that. Luxurious Cape, again, on those single prize Pokemon as a tool card. No longer have access to that. Mesagoza was played in Lugia and a couple of other niche areas where it was played, but that no longer will be part of our standard format. A huge loss to rotation is going to be Nest Ball. Nest Ball no longer in format. We do still have Buddy Buddy Poffin and Ultra Ball, but getting set up is just going to be a little bit harder. Palpad leaving us is another thing. We are not going to have access to put supporters back in with an item card at this point in time. Now, we do usually see a reprint of Palpad, so hopefully in the next couple of sets we'll see that. Penny, another Control-esque style card where we get to pick up our basic Pokemon and put the cards in our hand, is going to be lost. Picnic Basket, hopefully Monkey Dory doesn't still or continue to ruin the format here with placing damage counters, but we do have the Picnic Basket. Pokegear is another one that we are going to be losing. Professor Sada's Vitality in those ancient decks. Professor Turo's Scenario to help with picking our Pokemon up if they are getting stuck. So that's 2 cards, 2 supporter cards that help us pick our Pokemon up off the field and get them out of the way. Professor's Research has been such a great staple card. We usually see a reprint, but not this time around. As far as we know, we are not going to have access to Research. Rare Candy finally leaving us. We do not have access to Rare Candy unless we get a reprint. Those are generally reprinted. As you can see here, we have plenty of reprints. Right now, we don't have it confirmed, so we are going to be losing that. Along with Super Rod. Now, the recovery aspect of Pokemon has always been great. We still have Night Stretcher, but Super Rod no longer being in the format. This is something that generally gets a reprint from year to year, but we don't have confirmation on that one either. Superior Energy Retrieval, talking about recovery cards. We aren't going to have access to this, but Goldango is leaving the format, so we don't necessarily need it as much. Switch will most likely get a reprint of. We always do, so I'm not going to cover that one. But the TMs, the TM Evolution and the TM Evolution are something that will miss. Turbo Energize, also really good. Again, we're losing some energy acceleration as far as we know, so those TMs are going to be really influential when they're gone. Town Store as a stadium is going to be gone, and right now we don't have confirmation. Well, this Ultra Ball is so we're definitely getting that. Some of the cards at the bottom of this list still remain here, but Vitality Band, we are losing Vitality Band for the extra plus 10 damage on our output when we have to reach those really precise numbers. Having Vitality Band, we are going to lose that as well. Some of the special energies that we're losing are going to be Jet Energy, and we're going to be losing Luminous and Reversal Energy. So all of these have had their own niche scenarios. Obviously, Luminous being a staple in Dragapult, Reversal seeing its place in a lot of the Zoroark decks now in the current standard format, and Jet just being a overall great card in so many different decks, obviously helping us switch into the active. We did lose things in the past like Escape Rope, and we have Switch still currently in the format, but there's not a whole lot of switch elements. Having Jet Energy was really great here. So a lot of huge hits to the meta overall with these cards that we're looking at. Now, I know that we're going to have a lot of cards released soon coming into the new year of 2026. We are going to have Ascending Heroes as well as another new set even before the rotation hits. I know that Florida Regionals is going to be the last North American Regionals that will be played in the standard format, obviously due to the actual released date of rotation. So if you are wanting to play any of the cards that we talked about, that's going to be your last chance in North America to be playing those cards. And if you're in other regions of the world, just keep an eye on Pokemon's website. They tend to release when upcoming regionals for your region are going to be. So something to keep in mind also for local events like challenges and cups. Now, I want to kind of turn the direction of this conversation to decks that we aren't losing too much for, because that's really what you want to know. Are you going to be investing in Pokemon TCG? Do you want a deck that you can continue to play? And we'll talk about those now. I know that Ceruledge EX is going to be a great deck post-rotation. We do still have Mega Lucario EX that's going to be a great deck. We still have Mega Sharpedo that has its own engine. And we also have some other decks that are still sticking around here. We're looking at Dragapult. That's going to have a lot of key cards leave the format, but we're still going to have the majority of the engine to get it to work, still stay with us. And we're going to have Terra Box. Now, Terra and Briar specifically are still sticking around, so any sort of Terra-based Pokemon, we talked about that when we were looking through the Pokemon that are rotating. We're still going to have a lot of the Terra Box. We still have kind of Raging Ball, I guess, but we're going to have to think of new ways or innovative ways that we can play Crispin, and we can utilize Crispin to our advantage. And I'm sure that we'll see a lot of other cards come into the meta, and it's going to reshape. So if you're getting into Pokemon TCG now while you're watching this video and not after April, still find a low-cost deck that you can invest in and play the standard format, because a lot of these cards that we were talking about in the video are still very influential to decks, and they're relatively low in cost. So if you want to play a deck for the standard format, this is definitely the time to get into it and purchase the cards that you need. If you want to play something, again, that is good post-rotation, keep an eye on the channel, because I'll be posting a lot of lists. That way you can utilize anything to your advantage and build some decks for the future after April 10th when rotation hits. We still have quite a few months before we get there, but if I missed anything for rotation, or if I didn't mention a deck that was still viable, let me know down in the comments. I love to hear your opinions and your suggestions on what other types of videos I can do also on this channel, because I'm here for you, just to notify you and keep you up to date on what was released and how you can be better competitively, because we want you not to suck on How Not to Suck TCG. That's the main point. Now, again, if you're loving this channel, you can also subscribe here, or you can share it with a friend, just so the word gets out, so more people can see what's available to them as a resource to the community, and that's really what I'm here for. Anyway, I'm PJ, and this is How Not to Suck TCG, and we'll catch you next time.